Nick and Andy, the FA Cup final is coming up. It's another Manchester derby for the second season in a row. Man City against Man United. Nick, same outcome as last year with Man City winning it, or do we think Man United could cause an upset here?
I don't know. Yeah. I wonder very much about, it's easy to talk about mentality and how easy it is to rally and all of that, but Man United will have been thinking about this nonstop for a month, whatever you want to say. There were even talks, remember what Wayne Rooney said, that perhaps players were trying to save themselves for this game because they didn't care much for what happened towards the end of the regular season. The flip side of that is I just always don't know how teams react after a big celebration. And we can be pretty clear, judging by the media, that Man City had quite a time after winning the Premier League. So, yeah, I think this is going to be tighter than we expect. It's hard to pick against Man City, but I could see it going either way. I really could.
Andy, can you? Because I think, the way City won the title at the end of the season, absolute machine, just clicked into place once again. Any way they lose it? I mean, I'm looking at players, Edison being out injured may have some kind of impact, but other than that, I'm scratching my head to see where there's a weakness in this Man City team.
Yeah, it's tough to look past that and the form that City had down the stretch. I'm looking at it here now. They lost one game from December 10th onward to finish the season in all competitions, by the way. And we're not talking about in the Premier League. And it was the Real Madrid. They technically didn't lose it. They lost on the shootout after they drew after 120 minutes. So you could really say this team has not been beaten in a 90-minute or 120-minute game of consequence.
Is that good?
In almost 6 months, and it was a wonder, and kind of with a little bit of hindsight now, looking back at the Premier League title race, an even bigger achievement by Arsenal to stay in the race until the final day, given the form of City for the entirety of the second half, plus a little bit of the first half of the season. Just ridiculous form, and I think we have become a bit desensitized to it, and we would marvel at this a lot more if this wasn't the fourth straight Premier League title, if it wasn't yet another FA Cup final, if it wasn't yet, going for multiple trophies in a season. It's just become the norm with Manchester City, and that's the expectation. Whereas you look at United, they're hoping, are they hoping to win the FA Cup final? Because I think there's probably a faction of, maybe it's the supporters, maybe it's players, maybe it's people at the club, maybe it's the people making the decision, that it would be a little bit easier if they lost the final and they could move on from Erik ten Hag and say, well, you had your opportunity, you couldn't progress the project, you lost the final against the rivals, that could have saved you, we're going to move on this summer. And so you compare those two things right now, and they couldn't be living in many more different places than they are. But to Nick's point, 90 minutes, 120 minutes, who knows what might actually happen on the field at Wembley on Saturday.
Especially because United have done this to City in the past as well, in past seasons where they just sit back, hit them on the counter. And we all know City give up a lot of chances on the counter. United, if they revert to that kind of style, which they have been in recent weeks, and it's been pretty good for them with a couple of wins at the end of the season. That's the way they're going to play this game, right, Nick? I mean, they obviously finished 8th in the Premier League, didn't qualify for Europe. This is their only chance of qualifying for Europe next season. If they win it, the FA Cup, they get a group stage spot in the Europa League. So that's a decent achievement, given everything that's happened. But I mean, Bruno Fernandes, you've been raving about him for a while, and Rasmus Højlund, I mean, those two seem particularly key for the way that this game is going to play out, with Fernandes' quality playing the long balls, Højlund getting on the end of it and just making the most of any chance that City give United. So any other players that you want to earmark in this game?
No. Honestly, the top Bruno gets in, but the top 14, 15 players in this game are Man City players. It's where they're at. This is, and again, not to turn it right back on Man City, but both of these teams have spent an enormous amount of money. Which team didn't have, Andy, you talk about Arsenal's achievement, and I know you'll hate this as a Spurs guy, but what if I told you that Kevin De Bruyne, one of the best players in the world, played 1,200 Premier League minutes and City won the league? I mean, it's insane. And you can say what you want, and there are things to discuss that we will discuss in the future about, the composition of the team and the history of the club, and that's all well and good, and we can talk about the asterisks and all that. But let's be honest, this team, as constructed under one of the best managers to ever do it, is just superior in every way to their rivals. The difference is when Everton plays when Everton plays Liverpool, when Dortmund's down and they play Bayern, these rivalries all over the world, you're in for a game, and it's probably not going to be a blowout. And Man United's hopes are not about those two players. It's about bounces and heart and passion and energy. And I think these guys will show up. Will they get a bounce? I doubt it. But again, in a derby, right? It's hard to pick. How many times have we seen it?
Yeah. Andy, obviously last season it feels like it's going to be a similar game to that final, right? When, City came flying out of traps, United came back, and then City won it in the second half. But it feels like City have just stayed at the same level and United have regressed. And obviously injuries, especially defensively, have impacted that. But all the other stuff going on at the club with Eric Ten Hag, with Ineos, changing things behind the scenes, it's caused so much unrest. And I think if we look back to the end of last season, when City beat United narrowly in the FA Cup final, it was like, okay, United are still on the up, though. They're back in the Champions League. They won the League Cup. They're going to make big signings. They're going to be up there challenging City for the title next season. That never happened. So it's probably just putting a Band-Aid, right, over all the issues that United have if they were to win this FA Cup final this weekend.
Yeah, it is incredible to think back to last season's final as the starting point and then look at it through the lens of where they are now. And you're right, City have stayed as good, or you could argue that now Erling Haaland is better and Phil Foden has had a potential Ballon d'Or breakout type of season. Maybe they're a little bit better. Maybe they had more elite competition at the very top, and so they got pushed to the very end. But you could make a case that they're better this year than they were last season, and it's literally just the luck of a penalty shootout that's standing between them and going for the treble once again. And so it's and United at the same time. Yeah, you're right. They have regressed. They went out and they brought in the summer Mason Mount and Andre Onana, and they brought in Højlund. And while Højlund has been good individually, it's a lot of it has kind of happened at times where the team wasn't performing well. And I think you're right to say that it was a bit of a Band-Aid at times this season, Joe. Onana's had a ton of mistakes. He's had some great moments. He's had really high highs and really low lows. And Mason Mount contributed almost nothing this season due to injuries, and just the constant change of the team and the squad from game to game. It's the most chaotic club situation I can think of in a long, long time. Even what's happened at Chelsea the last couple of years, United feels like it's more of a mess that needs to be cleaned up and put back together, just for the simple fact, the scale of what's happening there, as big as the club was when this began, and how much money has been pumped into it, and how little or nothing they've gotten out of it. So I don't want to paint a terribly negative and bleak picture for United fans for Saturday or going forward, but like I said earlier, where these clubs are right now could not be any more different.
Nick, are our predictions going to be any more different when it comes down to it? What are you going for, mate?
No, we're gonna roll with it. We're going to take our time. We're going to say what we say and don't let anybody get in the way, in the words of Oasis. Manchester City, 3-0.
Andy?
Yeah, I'll go 2-0. They got them 3-0 and 3-1 in the Premier League this season. They were pretty comfortable in most of them, and I don't see a way it plays out differently in this one.
I'm going 3-1 to Manchester City. I think, again, just defensively, United have had so many problems. City are going to make the most of it. They're hungry to show everyone that maybe they are a better team this season than last season, even when they won the treble. And that Real Madrid penalty kick shootout defeat aside, they would have done it again. So I think there's so much hunger there this weekend. So head over to Pro Soccer Talk at NBCSports.com for Man City against Man United in the FA Cup final. We'll have you covered with live analysis, recap, reaction, and much more. It's going to be a fun one. Always is when the Manchester derby rolls around. And there's just a little bit of hope for Man United fans that they have a perfect day, City have an off day, and they are the ones celebrating at Wembley. But City, heavy favourites this weekend.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.